Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. My name is LIQUN. On behalf of the other two authors, Professor Victor Ri and Dr. JEETESH KUMAR, I would like to share our research with you. We are from Taylor's University, Malaysia. The topic of our study is investigating Chinese tourists' perceived value and purchase intention of cruise holiday after COVID-19. First of all, let me talk about the research background. So, an overview of cruise tourism. The study found that the cruise industry has become one of the most rapidly growing industries in global hospitality and tourism service. For the perspective of development of cruise tourist market, China is the most active cruise tourism in Asia. However, China's cruise tourism market is facing predicament. For example, the market is highly competitive. Tourists do not know much about the cruise tourism. It is necessary to conduct in-depth research on perceived value and purchase intention of Chinese tourists in the context of cruise tourism, especially after the COVID-19 outbreak. In the academic study of cruise tourism, there are a lack of research on the relationship between the tourist perceived value and purchase intention. Global COVID-19 has caused unperceived damage to cruise tourism, which is facing several challenges. The research gap of this study are the complexity of perceived value has not yet reached a consensus among scholars. The perception of the response of Chinese tourists toward cruise holiday could differ from the Western tourists because of cultural and other differences. In the context of COVID-19 epidemic, no scholars have studied the perceived value and the purchase intention of Chinese cruise tourism. And the research objective in this research are to examine the impact of Chinese cruise tourists' perceived value on purchase intention, to examine how Chinese cruise tourism perceived value influence the purchase intention through destination image, to examine the impact of Chinese cruise tourists' perceived risk on perceived value, to examine the impact of Chinese cruise tourists' perceived risk on destination image, to examine the impact of Chinese cruise tourists' perceived risk on purchase intention. This literature view of the study provides a definition of important concepts such as perceived value, purchase intention, destination image. Perceived risk and other academic results of the study relate to the purpose of the study. It summarized the development of cruise tourism in China and examined the concept of perceived value and purchase intention and other applications to cruise tourism. About the hypothesis development, the theoretical foundation of this study is the perceived value theory proposed by Very in 1988. After that, some scholars proposed the one-dimensional concept and others proposed the multi-dimensional concept. Some scholars have explored different dimensions of perceived value. This study proposed hypothesis 1. The perceived value of cruise tourists has a positive impact on purchase intention. 2. The perceived value of cruise tourists proposed influences purchase intention through destination image. 3. The perceived risk of the cruise tourist has a negative impact on perceived value. 4. The perceived risk has a negative impact on destination. 5. The perceived risk of the cruise tourist has a negative impact on purchase intention. This is the conception framework of this study. According to the research objective and assumption, the positivist research philosophy and the deductive approach were used in this study. Based on the research question in this study, the purpose of the research is exemplary. To achieve the purpose of study, the quantitative methodology research design were adopted in this study. The item controlled by perceived value, destination image, perceived risk, and purchase intention in the questionnaire were derived from literature review to obtain the major item. The questionnaire is a self-academic survey. The first part investigated social dimension collectively of the interviews. In the second part, respondents will ask about their perceived value, destination image, perceived risk, and purchase intention of cruise holiday. The 5-point leg scan was measured in this part. The third part is further to understand the perception of respondents' perceived risk. In order to improve the reliability and clarify questionnaire tools, at least 2 prior tests were conducted in this study, and some answers may be rewarded after the test. All scans were predicted in 10 Chinese graduate students to get the feedback on question clarify stability, internet consent, and whether to plan question meaningful to the respondents. The questionnaire was presented on 20 tourists who had previously taken cruise tourism. For the sampling, Shanghai, China was led by the purpose sampling. The purposive sampling was adopted to select a Shanghai International Travel Agency. The convenient sampling method was adopted to integrate the respondents, and the sample size should be at least 309 participants. The survey was taken to the form of online survey. The final question was distributed to the tourists via the internet will help a Shanghai travel agency. This study subject was selected based on 3 categories: Chinese citizen and age 80 and above, and tourists with the cruise tourism experience. A total of 491 valid questionnaires were received. SPS and the PRS-SEM were combined to analyze the data. The study examined the relationship among Chinese tourists' perceived value, destination image, perceived risk, and the purchase intention on cruise holiday after COVID-19 and put forward to the theoretical framework. And this study will summarize the extent to which COVID-19 has a negative impact on Chinese tourists' perception of cruise vacation and how efficient of the cruise industry address this perception. The findings of this study show that the perceived value of cruise tourism has a positive impact on purchase intention. The perceived value of cruise tourists positive influence purchase intention through destination image. The perceived risk of the cruise tourist has a negative impact on purchase intention. However, cruise tourists' perceived risk did not have a negative impact on perceived value. Cruise tourists' perceived risk did not have a negative impact on destination image. About the theoretical contribution, this study is the first attempt to explore the impact of Chinese tourists' perceived value on development of cruise tourism in China and identify the factors that inform the development of cruise tourism in China. This study attempts to the contrast of the theoretical framework of Chinese tourists' perceived value and purchase intention for cruise tourism, and to explore the countermeasure for China to develop the cruise tourism under the influence of COVID-19. Also, this study has the practical contribution. About the limitation of this study, the research was carried out at a time when COVID-19 was in full swing and affecting the countries around the world. The researcher could not be able to collect data at the cruise port and on the cruise ship. This study may need to spend more time and manpower to obtain the data. That's all my presentation. Thank you.